Hello. Dr. Emily Waters joins us all the way from San Francisco today to do a presentation on comics and advocacy. First off, Dr. Waters, tell us what you do in San Francisco.
Well, hi. So I'm a community psychiatrist, and right now I'm the medical director for a couple IOPs through Alameda Health System, and I also do a little bit of private practice.
All right, very, very cool. Now I read that you started to create comics to kind of help people deal with COVID a few years ago. How has that worked?
I started making comics on vaccines beginning of 2021, and also helping people understand kind of how the vaccines work, why they don't feel good when they get a vaccine, and I originally shared them just in neighborhood groups, and then the city picked it up, and then at work they connected me with some peer support workers who helped turn it into a comic book, and that whole part of COVID was really, it was one of the positive parts of COVID was getting to help people in my community understand the vaccine better and feel less afraid of it.
Very cool. So it sounds like it almost not only helped others, but kind of helped yourself kind of deal with it a little bit. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was really fun to get to talk to people who would reach out to me and say they saw it and it was helpful, and I loved it when people would tell me when they got the vaccine, and I kind of I think I became like a person who, when you get the vaccine, I'm someone to let know about it, because they kind of knew I was excited about the vaccines and I was going to be excited for them, and it was fun to share that with people.
Wonderful. Have you always been an artistic person? Have you been kind of a drawer or a scribbler kind of your whole life?
Definitely a doodler always, and I used to do a lot more writing and a little bit of kind of. We used to do some comedy videos long ago, but yeah.
You mentioned that that you work in community psychiatry. So, for people who don't know, what would you say the definition of community psychiatry is?
Sure. So, I would say it's usually working somewhere in the public sector, usually with people who have. Who are in like underserved areas, usually have maybe Medi-Cal or no insurance at all, and I think that's about it.
And it mentioned in your bio that you work a lot with people who are struggling with homelessness, addictions, trauma. Those three especially, how are those intertwined? Like, did somebody, if they're struggling with homelessness, they kind of also struggle with the other two as well?
That's a great question. So the way I look at it, because I think they are very, very intertwined, a thing that was a surprise to me the more I worked with people who are homeless is that many to most people who've become homeless have trauma histories, often from early childhood, and that put them at risk for getting a substance use disorder or trying substances at an early age. And both the trauma and the substance can be part of the picture of not being able to sustain work or have a place to stay, and there's less like connections with others. And then once a person becomes homeless, it's very common to use substances for safety, like to use meth to stay awake at night so that you don't get assaulted. And then because of all the trauma that can come from being on the streets and trauma from earlier years, it makes it hard to tolerate being in a place like a homeless shelter or going into treatment for an addiction because there's so many environmental triggers. And so a lot of times a person will end up fleeing those environments, and then they feel more hopeless and may not understand why they're fleeing. And often it's just a person trying to get safe. And so it's tricky to find those spots of helping to break that cycle.
Yeah. Now, so where do you see community psychiatry as kind of a branch that's kind of getting bigger? Does it need to get bigger? Where do you see the future of it?
So I think that there's not nearly enough community psychiatrists. I know there's not in the Bay Area, and there's, for a variety of reasons, it's a challenging role to stay in long term. And I don't think I've ever known a community psychiatrist who didn't absolutely love working with the patients, but it's often like the system itself is so difficult, and it's so hard to see people not get the things that they need. And those kind of, I think, wear on a person enough that many community psychiatrists don't stay long term.
Now, I know, getting back to the comics a little bit, obviously, COVID's still here. We all know that it's still here, but it's dying down a little bit. Is there still a call for you to keep doing those comics, or maybe do it to help other things other than COVID? Are you going to keep drawing?
Yeah. So I've been making some comics as part of different talks, and the last ones I made comics for was a talk on methamphetamine use disorders, and I think it's a nice way to talk about complicated topics like substance use disorders, where there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of stigma, and so some of those I may try and share more widely to perhaps reduce stigma and help people who either know someone in the middle of it or are in the middle of it themselves.
Very cool. And if somebody wants to see some of your work, what's the easiest way?
So I put my comics up at the Cartoon Shrink. And then I'm also on Twitter, and eventually I'll make my Instagram a little more alive.
All right, very good. And so the site is called Cartoon Shrink, all one word?
Yeah, thecartoonshrink.com.
And then what's your Twitter handle?
@CartoonShrink.
All right, there you go. You've got that patented. So all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Waters, for joining us. It's been great having you in Omaha, and a safe trip back to California.
Thank you so much.